We've got the Chicago Bears heading to Minnesota to take on the Vikings as 3-point underdogs. The total is set at 43. This is Showdown coverage brought to you by SharpFootballAnalysis.com. I'm your host, Adam Wilde. And before we jump over to DraftKings, we want to let you know we launched a huge Cyber Monday sale. Right now, use Sharp 71 and you'll get 71% off every single package we offer. Whether you're looking to get an edge betting or need some extra help to finish the fantasy season strong, we've got you covered. Our betting recommendations have been on fire in November. We've gone 22-9 on NFL sides, totals, putting our subscribers up 11 units. Don't miss out on the biggest sale of the year. Let's head over to DraftKings. The main injury that we're focused on is Foreman is likely to miss, which is, I guess, timed well for the Bears as well as it could be timed because they are getting Khalil Herbert back from IR. So you can essentially give Khalil Herbert the same workload that Foreman would have carried, except for probably a little bit more. Khalil Herbert probably has a little bit better receiving chops, even though we saw Foreman get some work in that category as well during his stint as the starter. Either way, Foreman out, Khalil Herbert in, and they were priced pretty similarly. It looks like 7,000 for Foreman and 6,800 for Herbert, which is probably too cheap to start out Herbert. I guess DraftKings anticipated a limited workload for Herbert, but that's going to be difficult to accomplish with Foreman sidelined. If Foreman ended up playing, their prices would make a lot more sense with Khalil Herbert getting all the work. As we expect, assuming he's full go from injury, which he probably doesn't come back from IR. If he's not full go, then he's just probably the best value at the slate at 6,800. Justin Jefferson will not be coming off of IR this week. So you've got two similar quarterbacks, as crazy as that is to say. If you would have said going into the season that Joshua Dobbs and Justin Fields have similar floors and maybe similar ceiling, probably not similar ceilings because I do believe in Fields as a passer. But to say that these two players are pretty similar and necessary on this slate is just a little bit weird given the difference in draft pedigree and NFL paths, but they are. So they almost become essential in our lineups because they are both have such large floors. Like you're talking probably 20 points from both players on basically every slate. So that's a lot to leave on the table if you don't play one of those guys. That makes it a little bit easier when you're building lineups because you know you're going to end up with a lot of those 3x3s, so you're going to end up with a single sack for one of the guys and a 4 on the other side. But it is going to leave us to find a lot of value. Like we're going to have to find a lot of cheap plays to make it work. So Justin Fields at 11,200, perfectly fine with his price, but obviously love Josh Dobbs at 10,000. If you have to pick a side, I'm happy to pick the Vikings for my 4x2s and my 5x1s if I go that route because Josh Dobbs is going to project similarly for 1,200 less. And I also like the cheaper receiving options, namely like Brandon Powell is always a good cheap option. He seems to make value on every slate. DJ Moore there at 10,400 just reaffirms the position I'm taking on preferring the Vikings. It's just so expensive to stack those two. It is a really high ceiling between Fields and DJ Moore, and there's very projectable targets for Moore when Fields is on the field, but that is eating up a lot of your salary and pretty much taking Dobbs out of the equation to put together a competitive lineup. So you're going to really struggle to play Fields, Moore, and Dobbs. So I kind of would prefer to stack Fields with somebody cheaper like Kmet and then have 4 Vikings in my lineup. So that brings us down to Hockenson, 9,000. And we'll talk about Hockenson and Jordan Addison at 8,200. So Hockenson's actually been pretty much the top wide receiver with Justin Jefferson out. His target share has been massive. He's pretty utilized in the red zone, even though he's not really getting the scores. He's getting the target. So those will come eventually. And 9,000 might start to scare people away a little bit. I think he was even more expensive than that on the last Viking slate. So I'm not sure we're going to sneak Hockenson by anybody at a low roster percentage, but he's still a good option with Josh Dobbs. He's 9,000. His $9,000 price tag is makes things a little bit difficult. And we'll look at that when we get to building. I think what we're going to end up with a lot of is like someone at captain like Hockenson or Addison, and then you're gonna have Joshua Dobbs and Justin Fields in the flex, and then you're gonna have to go like Brandon Powell and a kicker or something like that. That's probably what it's gonna end up looking like. But that takes us down to Alexander Mattison, who is a fantastic, fantastic contrarian option. I don't even know if he should be contrarian. He just keeps being in a weird price range where he doesn't really fit. Like last slate, when you want to play both quarterbacks, you want to stack them. And Alexander Madison's not known for his receiving work, so he just gets bypassed. And his workload's fine. I mean, he's got a strong workload. He's gonna play over 60% of the snaps. He's gonna see double digit touches. He's gonna get maybe one or two targets. It's good. It's really good for 7,400. He just doesn't fit great into how you want to build your lineups, which kind of makes him a really strong tournament play and someone I'm going to try to be more overweight on this week because last week I only had him sprinkled in uh, just a few of my 20 max lineups, and it kind of burned me because he scored a touchdown, I'm pretty sure. So having and he was only like his roster percentage was only like 20% or 25% or something like that. So he would have been a really strong play. And then Khalil Herbert's definitely not going to be actually that's probably a better case for Mattison. Khalil Herbert's only 6,800. That's saving 600 off Mattison. They're going to have like pretty much the exact same workload, except for Herbert might get a few more targets perhaps. And that's going to make it harder for people to click Mattison. So maybe Madison's roster percentage comes in even lower than last week, thanks to Khalil Herbert. That brings us down to Kmet. Like I said earlier, Kmet's probably going to fit into your lineup with Justin Fields just because he's pretty much the only other bankable target option outside of DJ Moore. So if you're going to play Justin Fields in a 4x2, then you're going to single stack him with probably Kmet just because he's so cheap and he's the only other person that you could trust to get targets. I mean, you're not really trusting Darnell Mooney at this point. You don't really have anyone outside of DJ Moore that you feel comfortable with. When you're talking large field, you'll start sprinkling in some of the other options. But when you want a smaller field and you want bankable production, somebody that actually is projectable, then you're going to go Cole Kmet. So that's probably who we're going to target in our 4x2 that we build here soon. KJ Osborn's workload is pretty strong with Justin Jefferson out. He's pretty much got the same workload as Jordan Addison, but he's just not producing as well as Jordan Addison. I mean, it is truly one of the few instances where you see two players have similar workloads, but the disparity in talent is so evident. I mean, KJ Osborn is a productive third option. He's stepping into the wide receiver 2 role fine, but he's just not able to produce on his targets the same way Addison has been able to. So, still a great stacking option to make those lineups work. Remember, I said we're going to need a mid price option to put in our Viking stacks, but he's just not going to do as much as Addison. And that's why his price is different. They're not priced the same. So, that's totally fine. It's very interesting to see two players get similar opportunity, but one to produce so much better. But that doesn't mean that KJ Osborn is a stranger to a ceiling game either. There's been plenty of times that he's produced quite well. Actually, I think one of my bigger wins came on the heels of KJ Osborn. When I had a Dallas stack with Cooper Rush, actually, and my bring back was KJ Osborn, and he made it happen for me. So he is not afraid of a ceiling performance. Darnell Mooney at 4,800 pretty much has been his price all season, and it's just, I mean, they don't make him cheaper because he can break a long touchdown. That's kind of his MO. But when is he going to break a long touchdown? I don't know. If you're playing 150 lineups, he's in your player pool, of course. He's going to fit great when you're running 4x2s and you want to stack Justin Fields. You're going to need someone Cole Kmet or cheaper probably. So he's fine there, but he's just not somebody that you can really rely on to have a quality workload. Roschon Johnson's going to be one of the more popular plays like sub 3K just because he's going to be in the same role that he was in with Deonta Foreman, and he had a pretty high roster percentage then. So nothing's really changing for Roschon Johnson. His workload's not going to increase because, like I said, Khalil Herbert is pretty much just going to take on Deonta Foreman's role. It's just a 1-for-1 swap, but you get to save a little bit of salary because Herbert is cheaper than Foreman. So no big change there. Roschon Johnson's the same as last week. He's totally fine. He's going to have a high roster percentage though, and he's not going to get a ton of receiving work, so he's not going to pair super well with Fields. I guess if you want to encapsulate the entirety of the offense, or you want to think that it's a Bears rushing day, then you could play Justin Fields and Roschon Johnson, but you're not going to get any real correlation between the two. In fact, you're going to get some negative correlation there. Um, that's not to say that I would completely rule that out, but it just isn't exactly optimal. And then we get down to really the last two guys I want to talk about. Josh Oliver at 2,600 and Brandon Powell at 2,000. I like that they made Oliver more expensive than Powell because I do prefer Powell, but Oliver's been hard to ignore. He's been involved the last 2 weeks, and he was really a favorite of mine when he played for the Ravens too. But now at 2,600, he's starting to get a little rich. He's like Noah Gray in that he's your favorite until he gets too expensive and then you despise him. So my affinity for Josh Oliver is quickly waning as he gets more and more expensive. So 600 more than Powell. Give me as much Powell as possible. But just remember, if you're in that large field type of situation or you're playing like 150 max, keep Josh Oliver in the player pool. Don't take a stand on Powell over Oliver because both of them have they will both net more than 0 points. So if you can get positive results out of a 2,000 and 2,600, I wouldn't mind making a rule not to play both of them though. It's just something that I don't have a lot of a lot of fond memories of playing two sub 3K players and them working out unless you get something crazy where there's a workload change and the 3K player is actually like the starter, like let's say Khalil Herbert and Deonta Foreman was out, then obviously you throw that rule out of the window. But beyond that, like Josh Oliver and Brandon Powell, you're happy if one of them gets you 4 points, but you're not really happy if both of them get you 8 points, if that makes sense. So I would not mind throwing a roll in there. Get them both in your lineups, especially when you're playing your 20 max and your 150 max, but try to eliminate the lineup, and especially your projection systems or your optimizers or whatever you're using to build those 150 maxes will include a lot of those because the median projection is going to look really strong, but the ceiling just is not there unless one of them catches a touchdown, I guess, which sure could happen. So let's get into building these lineups. Like I said, what you're probably going to want to start with is either Hockenson or Addison at captain. That does not mean, and Dobbs kind of fits too. The problem is Fields at captain. People are going to be comfortable single stacking Fields, so it still works with a 4x2 with the Vikings, but the problem is just how much salary Justin Fields eats up when he's at captain. So it really just doesn't make sense. You're not doing yourself a lot of favors unless you're going to stack the Bears. So you can viably stack Justin Fields at cap or play Justin Fields at captain with just one receiver. But more likely, if you're playing Justin Fields at captain, you probably want or 2 to 3 receivers paired with him. So we're going to go the route of let's do Jordan Addison just because he's the cheapest. Make our life easier here for the first one, and then start with Fields and Dobbs. And then I like to go down and get my cheap player in just so that I can have a better picture of what I'll have left over when I'm hand building. So I'll throw Brandon Powell in here, and so you have 72.50 left over. Wouldn't mind throwing Khalil Herbert in here, and then you have Alexander Mattison, and that feels awesome because you don't have. It's okay if you're playing Brandon Powell with Jordan Addison at captain, because even if Brandon Powell gets you 4 to 6 points, he's probably not negatively correlating with Jordan Addison that much. So you have Jordan Addison at captain, Justin Fields, Joshua Dobbs, Brandon Powell, Khalil Herbert, Alexander Mattison. And I told you Alexander Madison's probably going to be a good play. And in this instance, he actually helps your build. In other instances, it's like if Dobbs was the captain for this lineup, then you're in a situation where you're saying, well, did I really add to my Joshua Dobbs stack? Like, did I add to Josh Dobbs' ceiling by playing Alexander Mattison? No, probably not. But when you have a wide receiver at captain and you play the running back, you're not positively correlated, but you're also not negatively correlated. You're not a receiver that directly is eating into his targets. Like if we played Hockenson here, I wouldn't feel as great about it because I think it's probably going to be a Jordan Addison or TJ Hockenson day. Unless you're playing Dobbs at captain, then you're fine playing both of them. So we can build that here in a second too. So love this lineup a lot. This is a really good single entry lineup, but we can go ahead and put Joshua Dobbs at captain, and then get something a little bit more indicative of what a true Viking stack would look like. And that would include Hockenson, Addison. Once you get to Fields, it might be tough, but let's go ahead and try it. We'll go down to Brandon Powell and see what we're left with, 4,600. So that's fine. I mean, I guess you put Santos in. That's not terrible, but you're not stacking Fields at all. You can't quite fit Mooney. You're 200 off of Mooney. What else could you do? Yeah, you could do Josh Oliver, but then you're still single stacking Fields. You really don't have a ton you could do here. And like we talked about earlier, Roschon Johnson's not really helping your Justin Fields stack either. So this is just an example of how it was difficult to play Josh Dobbs at captain. That's why I said you're probably starting with Hockenson and Addison and then playing off that. Because if you have Dobbs at captain, you probably want Hockenson and Addison. I guess what you could probably do here is instead of Powell, you might be able to go down to like, no, I don't really like any of the punt plays for Chicago either. So I'd probably be scrapping this and I'd probably put in something like Mattison. Like we talked about, I'm not super pumped about stacking him with Dobbs, but it's neither here nor there. It's not something you can't do. It's just not something that I feel is the optimal decision either. And then you probably put Brandon Powell back in here, and then you probably free yourself up some more money. So now you have 5,400. Now you can play both kickers. You can play Darnell Mooney if you wanted to, and at least you get your single stack there. So this is more of a large field situation. But Joshua Dobbs, T.J. Hockenson, Alexander Mattison, Justin Fields, Brandon Powell, Darnell Mooney leave 600 on the table, and that's really strong for large field. But the problem is you just have to rely on Darnell Mooney. But that's what you do in large field. You're playing somebody that nobody else is comfortable playing. And it just so happens that he profiles as somebody with a high ceiling. So this is the kind of lineup you don't feel great about, but you do feel good about putting it in a large field because this is you have Alexander Mattison, who's already going to be good leverage, and then you have Darnell Mooney, who's going to be great. I mean, he's going to be his ceiling relative to his floor is pretty strong. Like his floor is so low, but his ceiling's pretty high as well. So that's like I always think of the MVS archetype for large field. I always like to look for the MVS guys because he's going to cost you money 5 times a year, but one of those games he's going to make it all back for you. So that's who I like to target, and I kind of put Darnell Mooney in that mold. But that's going to do it today for Showdown coverage brought to you by sharpfootballanalysis.com. And we will catch you next week. Peace.